What's up, Hindsighters? It's your favorite host, Rhasheeda Davis, and the Indie Grind is back with another amazing segment. Today we're here with the saxophonist, vocalist, and multi-instrumentalist, Marqueal Jordon. Welcome to the Indie Grind, Marqueal. Thank you for being with us. How are you?
I'm doing good, Rhasheeda. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I want to get started with your musical background. How did you come to learn that the saxophone was the instrument for you?
It's really kind of a convoluted story. I'll try to make it quick. I grew up in Los Angeles, and my father is a frustrated musician himself. Like, I think if he had his way, he would have been some kind of a musician. His dad was a drummer and a flamenco dancer, if you can imagine that. But so he wanted to follow in the footsteps of his father, obviously. But, you know, he had the three of us. I had two older sisters, fairly young. So he went to work, but he had a great music collection on the weekends. He would play music and play congas and sing with the records and stuff like that. So I grew up listening to a bunch of jazz. And like the two people that really stuck out to me when I was a kid was John Coltrane and Miles Davis. So through process of elimination, I wound up just gravitating towards the saxophone. And it's primarily because my dad wanted me to play it. I mean, I think his love for that transferred to the love that I have for music, and being around John Coltrane and saxophone players like Eric Dolphy and Cannonball Adderley and all that stuff growing up, it just made me want to play saxophone. And I was really into Train. So that's what happened. I decided I wanted to play that, I think when I was like 7 or 8 years old, but I had to wait until I got to the 7th grade in order to start playing the saxophone. So I didn't start playing the sax until I was 12. Before that, I was playing the clarinet.
Okay. One of my friends told me she was a clarinet player as well, and she tried to switch to saxophone, actually. She ended up staying with the clarinet, but she says it's a little different because I guess the wood piece, I don't know, but I figured it would be the same because, you know, it's a woodwind instrument and you have to have a lot of wind. So what would you say about that? Was it the same for you when you switched over?
I was a terrible clarinet player. So I never really got good at it. It's a beautiful instrument. It's a difficult instrument to play. So actually playing the clarinet is a lot more difficult than playing saxophone, but it just kind of depends on what you're used to. And they are similar in the woodwind family. And, you know, there were similarities. There's some fingering similarities, but they're definitely two different instruments. And I think, like I said, a saxophone is much easier to learn to play. But for me, I was like, I finally got the instrument that I want to play. So it was easier for me to really get into playing that as opposed to playing the clarinet.
Gotcha. I read that you're a multi-instrumentalist. So what other instruments do you play?
Well, primarily, the only thing that you really want to see me do in public, to be honest, is play the saxophone, sing, and play percussion. And I really
you play percussion?
Yeah, I developed that skill because, like I said, my dad played congas. Let me back up a little bit. I started on drums when I was 5 years old, but I never really got that far on it. Then I went to clarinet at like age 8, did that for 4 years, and in between that time, I was taking some piano lessons. So I played piano well enough to write, but not to perform, if that makes any sense. And I just watched my dad play percussion, you know, and I never really took like a formal lesson. It was just like watching him play congas. And when I was growing up, my parents had a friend by the name of Selden. I can't even remember his brother's last name, but he was a percussionist for many years with Ahmad Jamal. So when we would go over to his house, he had all of this percussion and stuff set up and shakers and everything. And I was just mesmerized by it. But ironically enough, I never really developed that skill to play and perform percussion in front of people until I got the Brian Coverson gig. And that kind of came together in a goofy kind of way. We were rehearsing and there was some bongos set up and I just started playing on them. And Brian was like, hey, for me writing, it doesn't come as easy. So the process, regardless of the genre, is pretty much the same. Like I'll hear something in my head and then I'll try to get it down. And if it sticks with me, then I continue to develop the idea. Most of the songs that I've written that have been on my albums or that I've co-written with people, they seem to happen quickly. Like the best songs usually are written pretty fast. The ones that you have to labor over are the ones you never release. But I'm working on my process. Actually, I'm going to start seriously working on my third record because I have a goal to get it out by my birthday this year. So I'm excited. It's a challenge that I'm looking forward to really tackling because I want to do more writing on my next record coming up. And it'll probably be all over the map. As far as different styles and things go, since I've done so many different things, it's hard for me to say, well, I'm just a jazz artist, because there's certain things that jazz artists do that I can't do. Then I sing as well. So then, okay, I'm a soul and R&B act, but I have the jazz aspect of what I do. So I think what winds up being the case, instead of me writing for a particular genre, I wind up just writing for my personality, and whatever that winds up being is what comes out.
Okay. Wow, that's a good answer. So pretty much your favorite genre to play would be jazz, right?
I think that's the one that's the closest to my heart because of my foundation growing up. And, one of these days before it's all said and done, I'm going to make, for lack of a better term, since we have all these genres and labels that we put on music, which are real limiting. But one of these days I am going to make a traditional jazz record, something in the style of a Branford Marsalis, who's my absolute favorite, or John Coltrane, because that was my dream when I started playing saxophone. I didn't think about doing the things that I eventually wound up doing. I just thought I wanted to be a saxophone player like John Coltrane, So that's the one that's closest to my heart. But over the years in college and then moving to Chicago and seriously becoming a professional musician, you get afforded the opportunity, or you have to because you need to eat. You play a bunch of different styles of music. So I play blues. That has a place in my heart. I play soul and R&B, which really, that's music that I grew up on. So that's really, a passion of mine as well. So it's hard to say what my favorite is. I know what's the most fun. Like, no matter what, singing and doing songs with vocals is always more fun because the crowd gets into the vocal aspect of what you're doing immediately because they know the words. They can immediately latch an emotion onto what you're saying and they can feel it. The challenge with instrumental music is to be able to relay that feeling, without work. And the people who are the best at it, like the first person I think of right now is like Kirk Whalum, like he doesn't need any words and you feel everything that he's doing. So in my heart and what I really want to do, that is the way I want to be as a jazz musician. But then I want to be able to step up and grab the mic and then be able to do the same thing, singing. It just kind of depends on the day. But I would say jazz is the one that's closest to my heart, that I really have the biggest respect and the biggest amount of like really wanting to get it right for.
Okay. So with you having the most respect for the jazz genre, is there a difference in the genre of music you prefer to listen to as opposed to actually performing jazz? Like, you have the most respect for jazz, but is there a certain genre that you're like, okay, well, I prefer to perform R&B, or I prefer to listen to soul, or is it the same?
It depends on what mood I'm in.
Okay.
It's funny. I listened to a lot of jazz when I was younger. And then as I got older, I started listening to everything and then started listening to stuff that my peers were into. And, I guess I'm aging myself a little bit, but I was a teenager in the 80s. So everything that happened in the 80s that ran through the 80s, whether it was like the Police or Run DMC or the SOS Band or any of that stuff, is all in my music vocabulary. It's all music that I grew up with, and it impacted me in a real way. So when I went to college, I started going back to jazz because I was getting more serious about playing the saxophone. And then, of course, hip-hop was huge at that point. So I'm kind of a musical chameleon. And anything can strike me at any given point, like whatever mood I'm in. Like, there's certain times when I just want to hear jazz. Or there's certain times where I just want to hear Anita Baker or Sade, or I want to hear Ice Cube, or a Tribe Called Quest, or like Kendrick Lamar or Robert Glasper, or, just anything that's good that kind of strikes some kind of emotion in me, or I can listen to it and I can scientifically dissect it from a musician standpoint. I'm like, okay, I'm interested in that. I like what that sounds like. This is dope. Let me check it out. So it just really kind of depends on what mood I'm in, Like, if it's a beautiful sunny day, I want to listen to some hip hop and drive around, So it just kind of depends. It depends.
Right. Okay. Marqueal, do you have a normal band that you travel with, or you just get locals each time, or how does that work?
It depends. If it's somewhere close to Chicago, I prefer to use my regular working band of guys that I've known for years here in Chicago. And we just kind of have a rapport. It's like family. It's a musical, telepathic kind of connection. But obviously, because of the industry and the cost involved in flying people here and there, it's not like we're on big, long tours. We're doing spot dates here and there, or I'm doing spot dates here and there. So to make it all work economically, I generally use local musicians. And that is always a challenge.
I was going to ask you about it. I was going to see what the process is like when you practice with them once you came to town. Like, how exactly does it work? What makes it so challenging?
Girl, let me tell you. Really what it is that you're just hoping, especially if you're in a city where you don't really know as many musicians. So you're just hoping that the recommendations that you get are people that, one, are good musicians, two, they do the homework, and three, this is most important, that they respect the music. I've been in some situations where either people didn't take the time to really learn the music. So you get to the sound check and then you're running through music and it's kind of like, okay, well, we won't be able to do that tonight, or we won't be able to do this tonight. And it's like you have to alter your show in order to make the show work, or there are people that they probably listen to the music and they think, oh, I got it, 1 or 2 times, I got it. But then they get into a situation and, in everybody's music, no matter how simple people might think it is, there's things that are a little tricky. There's little parts there that make little left turns and U-turns in the music, so to speak, that if you don't respect the music enough to learn all of those things, then when you get in the middle of a performance, you're going to miss some of that stuff. And there's 2 things about that. One, no matter what happens on stage, the show must go on, and as an artist, and if your name is on the marquee, you got to be able to deal with it and not look upset or be upset because you ruined the show. The other thing is, unless it is something that is absolutely disastrous, 90% of the time the crowd will never know. They'll never know. It is mind-boggling in a way, but then it's reassuring because even if they do notice a mistake, 9 times out of 10 the people are there because they want to see you, they want to support you, and they're with you no matter what. But when it does work out well, it's a beautiful thing. I have to shout out a couple of house bands in Atlanta that I had at Sweet Food Lounge, and that's Doc Robinson. He does the promotion for that. The bands there are always amazing. And when I play in Birmingham at Perfect Note, I think that's Tremaine Thompson, he always hires great house bands as well. So when you get in a situation where you're back in the city the 2nd time or the 5th time, the guys, and it's like, hey, good to see you again, brother. Let's make some music. And then, there's a level of comfort that you feel, so then you're not as on edge. But there are times when you go in and you're going in for the first time and you don't quite know what to expect. You just hope that things work out. Right.
Like you said, certain things, they do take the left turns, like, for example, in jazz music. Sometimes you'll start off, a 4/4, but then the time signature just changes up, on you, and it's just whoa. So, everybody has to be ready for that. Have you ever had a performance where it just did not work out, where you had to just keep that straight face, and it's like, I know they noticed it. You know what I mean? Have you ever had one of those?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We all have. And I mean, the funny thing about it is, even with, like I mentioned earlier, I toured with Brian for 10 years. So even on shows that have been rehearsed, where you do, you've done the same show and you know it's coming, you can do it in your sleep, you get mistakes on those shows too. It's just like music takes such a high level of attention and concentration. And if you happen to lose that level of focus for even a split second, disaster could strike at any given moment. But if you're working with a touring band and you guys are touring all the time, that stuff is rare. But yeah, there's a performance that I had, I won't say which city, but
please don't
literally No, I'm going to be performing there later on this year, so I'm hoping that things go a little bit better. But
don't say it.
No, I'm not going to say it. But and it wasn't a full show because I wasn't the only artist on the show, but I had 4 songs that I was doing, and literally there was a mistake, several mistakes in every song that I did. And when you're on stage doing that, like, you just feel naked. You just feel exposed. Like, But again, no one notices if you don't make a big deal about it, you know. And there was a good friend in the audience that I talked to afterwards, and she was like, yeah, I kind of noticed it, but it was still a good show. Like, that was it. So the best thing to do is, you know, it's like in a football game. If you throw an interception, shake it off, you'll get a chance to get out there and hopefully score a touchdown on the next drive. So that's what you have to have. You have to have that mentality, you know, or I'll make a mistake. Like, the band will be right, or I might miss a high note, or, you know, I might not hit the right note, or I might sing a note and it's, you know, out of tune or off key. You know, those kind of things that people definitely, unless it's super exposed, they don't notice that either. But you can mentally really mess yourself up because you're thinking about the mistake that you made and you're not shaking it off and going forward. So, I mean, that's the exciting thing about if you're a fan and you're going to see somebody, and the exciting thing about being on stage performing live, because anything can happen. And that's the beauty of it, to be able to master that moment where all of these things are happening, how the crowd is responding to you, how you're responding to the crowd, all of those things that kind of come into your head. That's what makes for a memorable experience.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And I feel the good thing about performing. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to one of the other indie artists that I interviewed not too long ago. You kind of feed off of each other. Like, you may be playing or singing and they're feeling it and they're feeding off of you, and the fact that they're feeding off of you is pumping you up. You know, you're feeding off of them. So that definitely makes it a little better performing live, because when you do sound recordings, like in a normal studio, I mean, it's a good time too, but, you know, when you have that audience just listening, you're feeding off of each other. And then even if you do mess up, you know, you can always redeem yourself.
Sure.
So,
absolutely.
But yeah.
Absolutely.
So, okay, when you're back in Chicago with your normal band, do you compose for the entire band? Like, when you come up with a song, do you have a certain sound that you want them to do, like a certain rudiment for the drummer or something, or do you leave it up to them, or, you know, just let them improvise?
Oh, that's a great question. And I can tell you're a musician by asking that. That's what's up. That's dope.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I generally lean towards letting them figure out what it is to do. Like, obviously, if there's a bass line, that's pretty static, so you give it to the bass player. But the bass player that I work with, his name is Lamar Jones, and he's my favorite bass player in the world. You know, he's played with many people, but he's a Chicago cat. We played together for years. He'll play the foundation of what it is that I want, but then he's going to expand and take it somewhere that I can't think of because I'm not a bass player. You know, I might hear some things in my head and I'll be like, can you take it this way or do it that way? But if you have the right people in place, they'll pretty much play the right thing. But if it's something that I definitely want, yeah, I will tell them. But, you know, I think that's what makes an amazing band experience, when everybody is kind of bringing themselves and their musical personalities and their spirit into what's going on. Like, you know, making my second record, I really actually had the desire to do more live songs with the band and less collaborating with producers like I did on my first record. But it was hard to get the guys in the studio. It was just a challenge because everybody's busy, people are on tour, and everybody's doing gigs. I mean, we're all musicians. This is what we do. We don't do anything else. So I would schedule some studio time and be like, yo, let's go to the studio, and somebody will have another gig or they'll have another studio session. So I couldn't make it happen. So the one song where it is my actual band playing on the record, it wasn't even actually a song. We went in to work on something else. And before we worked on something else, we were checking the levels, and the guys just started working on a groove. And I was like, okay, we're going to record this. And, you know, through the process of working it out, it turned into a song. Like, they didn't know when they left the studio, it was just keyboards, bass, and drums. And they were just playing, and I said, okay, let's take this change, and let's go here, and let's do that. But it sat for months, and then when I went back to work on the record, I went back and crafted a song on it and added a saxophone to it and brought in a guitar player to finish things out. And it's my favorite song on the record. But it was basically just us testing levels in the studio. And sometimes that's when the magic happens. It's stuff that is unexpected, the things that you don't plan.
That's right, exactly. Because I feel like, you know, when you're recording in a studio, it's a little different than you actually just playing it live. You know, it's just like, oh, well, let's practice. And, you know, somebody might start with here, oh, that sounds good. Let me add a little guitar. You know, I feel like it's less inspiring, I guess. And you kind of just loop it back. You know, it's just this one little loop when you just play it and then just keep recording it, you know. But when you're all together and it's live and you guys are looking at each other, like the guitarist may look at the bass at the drummer, it's not premeditated, you know, so everybody can just do their own thing. That's pretty cool. Wow.
Yeah, I think that the magic happens when you have everybody in the room. Now, there are people, phenomenal artists like a Stevie Wonder or Prince, God rest his soul, people that can go in and play every instrument. They know exactly what they want, and they can really, really put it together, and they're geniuses. You know, actually, I tour with a genius right now. He's a young kid, and I say young, like relatively young, especially compared to me. He's 30 years old, but he's a beast. He's from Chicago. His name is Isaiah Sharkey. He's toured with D'Angelo and John Mayer. He currently tours with John Mayer. So he's a monster. He can go in the studio and craft a song and play drums and play bass and keys, and, you know, he's primarily a guitar player and a singer, and he can put that whole thing together, and you hear it and you be like, man, did you have a band in there? He's like, nah, that's me playing all that stuff. It's crazy. But then on his record, he has songs where he has the entire band playing. And, you know, I've come in and played saxophone on a few tracks, and it's just as amazing. But I think for me, being a creative person, I tend to get more inspired when I'm around a group of people, you know, because we grow up, when we play music, we start off playing music in our room. But we always, eventually, when we go out, we're playing with other musicians or we're playing with a band. So that's my comfort zone. That's a creative space that I prefer to be in.
Okay, nice. Andrea, when she went to your show here in South Carolina, she came back and she was saying, oh, man, Marqueal, it was just so nice. She said one thing that she did like about it is that even though you're Marqueal Jordon, like, you gave everybody a chance to shine. You know, a lot of people don't do that. They're like, oh, this is just the band in the back and this is me just playing my solo. But she said you gave everybody a chance. So everybody was just getting off and they were just doing their little solo. And, you know, that's definitely what it's about, because you are who you are. But, you know, some people, they give other people a chance, you know, to shine. And she said she did enjoy that for sure.
Well, shout out to Andrea. She's a sweetheart, and I'm glad that she came to the show, because that's why I'm talking to you now. I appreciate it. But
that's right.
For me, you know, and I think it's a variety of different things, and I get long-winded, so hopefully I'm not too long-winded.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine.
But it's from growing up listening to those jazz records. You know, if you listen to Kind of Blue, which is a record that that was like one of my favorite records when I was a kid, or, you know, John Coltrane's The Love Supreme. Of course, Miles is taking solos, you know, or Train is taking solos, but there's always space for the piano player, you know, and Miles had Train and Cannonball on that record. So they soloed as much, if not more, as Miles did on Kind of Blue. So that's the school I come from. Like, I don't need to play for an hour and a half. I don't even think I have enough interesting music to say and make in an hour and a half, and it's just me playing. You know, like, you want to give people kind of an ear break, really, you know, and you want to hear piano, you want to hear a bass player play, or, you know, you want to get a drummer some, you want the guitar player to do his thing. So that is the approach that I've always had. And, you know, especially in the genre of smooth jazz, there's certain artists that they don't allow anyone to play any solos. Like, they're the headliner, they play all night, that's all you're going to hear. You might hear the piano player play for like 8 or 16 bars in one song, and then the next song is just all saxophone or all guitar or whatever it is, and that works for them, but that just was never really my personality. I even had one of my really good friends, a fellow musician, he told me when he came to the show and we were in a band together, in college. And then when I moved to Chicago, he was up there as well. We started a band. He told me, you know, when I was seriously getting my thing together to what it is that I'm doing now, he was saying, man, you let those guys solo too much. And I was like, I'm taking a Miles Davis approach to it. That's what I do. And at the end of the show, everybody is going to know that it's my thing, no matter what. So that's just kind of the approach I have. And over the years, I've come to respect that approach, you know, so I've become a little more selfish and take more moments for myself. But at the same time, at the core, it's like, it's a community cooperation, communication kind of thing. You know, otherwise I could just be on stage playing to tracks, you know, if that's really the vibe that I want, you know. So I want people to breathe and feel the music and let things be organic and, you know, all of those things.
Right. So, Marqueal, do you feel that there's something that caused your music to improve as far as composing music, performing music, or, you know, having a more trained ear? It could be anything as small as teaching someone else or playing with someone else. You know, has anything caused your music to improve since you first started? It could even be moving to Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest way that I can answer that question is in one 4-letter word: life. You know, like, I think the more you do something, the better you get at it, for one. But the other thing is the things that happen in your life, like whether it's something amazing or something catastrophic, it all impacts what we do, especially if we're artistic people and we express ourselves and our emotions through some form of art. In my case, it's music. Like, you know, me getting married impacted how I played. Me having my daughter impacted how I played, or becoming a better musician. You know, me getting divorced, that impacted the music. And just being in places where I really had to step up to the plate because I was performing with someone who was an idol, you know, or someone who I looked up to, or somebody that I really respected, or I got a chance to do a gig in, you know, a big major orchestra hall, or, you know, I was on tour with Brian Culbertson. Like, all of those things impact what you do. And the higher the stakes are, the more it requires of you. The more it requires of your focus, the more it requires you to give your all and test your limits and really become better as an artist and become better as a musician and get those skills together so that when those moments come up, you can really step into them and really make them your own and really shine and not fail.
Right.
I mean, I think that's just kind of what happened with life. I think I'm a better musician now on this day than I was 10 years ago, just because I have 10 more years of life and experience and things that can influence everything I'm doing. So I can bring a lot more emotion to the technique or to the songwriting or to the performance. So just keep on living. It'll eventually get there.
That's right.
You know?
Now, this is a little bit similar to the question before, but it's kind of different because you moved from LA to Chicago. So do you think that move to Chicago shifted or influenced your music sound a little? What do you think about that?
Well, there was a stop in between. So for my progression of life, I grew up in Los Angeles. When I was 13, we relocated to Kansas City, Kansas because of my father's job. So that was right around the time that I was starting high school. So I was automatically becoming more serious about playing music because high school band, and there's marching band and concert band and then jazz band. So I had more opportunities to play saxophone and to be around more talented individuals. And then college, went to the University of Kansas, and I was in the jazz ensemble there, played in a bar band, which is where I really learned how to play in clubs and things of that nature. Then that impacted everything. So it was like everything was just kind of a stair step. And then after I graduated from the University of Kansas, I moved to Chicago, and I thought I was ready. You know, I thought I knew what I was doing. But, you know, Chicago is a city full of major, amazing, talented musicians that people have heard of and then people have never heard of. And it's any genre, any style, any ethnicity, any side of town. Like, you're going to run into a beast on whatever they play. And that really forced me to step my game up. The thing about Chicago that made it easier than, say, Los Angeles or New York, while there's great musicians and there is competition, it isn't that cutthroat competition or that life or death competition that you would find in both of those cities. So through my 20s, I was able to grow into being the musician that I eventually became, somewhat, I won't say at a leisurely rate, but definitely a lot more leisurely than if I was in my hometown or if I was in New York. And all of those moves, they kind of, you know, it kind of was like me climbing up a mountain and getting better as a musician. You know, I definitely, there's no way I would be the artist that I am had it not been for Chicago. Now I've been here for half of my life. And as much as Los Angeles is my hometown and I really claim it and I wear it on my chest, Chicago is home, you know, and it really has informed my music. It's informed my writing. It's informed the musicians that I prefer to play and make music with. Like, I'm looking through them through like a certain prism, like, and then I have to really kind of check myself at times because it's like, we don't do that way in Chicago, like, you know, but everybody has their experiences and their influence that they bring to the table. So, you know, you got to be open to that kind of stuff too. But yeah, absolutely. Like all of the moves and the locations that I've been, and the people I've experienced, musicians that I've had the pleasure of being exposed to or been able to make music with, they all affected me in a positive way. You know, even if it was a negative experience, it reminded me of what I would prefer or what I don't want or how I would attack something in the future. So yeah, it's absolutely affected everything.
Nice. Hindsighters, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back to Face the Music with Marqueal Jordon. In the meantime, we're going to take a listen to The Edge, one of his songs from his latest album, Intention and Purpose. Welcome back, Hindsighters. We're back in the studio with Marqueal Jordon. Marqueal, when you first started performing, were you used to the spotlight? Before 7th grade, when you were playing, like before the actual saxophone, were you used to the spotlight, whether it was singing or playing another instrument, or like how exactly were you? Were you kind of shy?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me this question, because if I look back on my life, there's one kind of pivotal moment. It was 6th grade graduation, and it was in Los Angeles. And again, I'm going to show my age. So this is like 1982 when I graduated from 6th grade. So at the time, like Ebony and Ivory was like the big, huge song. So we did it in the graduation. So they played the record in my graduating class. It was just one class. We sang on top of it, you know, but like out of the 30 kids that were in my 6th grade class, it was a magnet school. We were going to school in Hollywood. And out of the 30 kids in the 6th grade class, like 4 of us could actually really sing and belt out. And I was one of the 4. So, you know, like my mom was like, man, we could pick your voice out of everybody, you know. And that was kind of sort of get my feet wet, but I was pretty much a shy kid. But then 2 days later was the last day of school, and they had a talent show. So I got together with like me and a couple of my friends who really couldn't sing, but they were cool. So we were going to do the Daz Band song, Let It Whip, right? So I knew all of this because I had a good ear. And really, I knew that I kind of had a good ear even back then because I could pick out songs, could sing melodies and that kind of stuff. I just didn't take myself seriously as a singer. But this is the first time I got in front of an audience and was actually singing. And it was a little scary, you know, and then I think I hit one of them high notes and then like everybody laughed, right? And then by the time that I hit last high note towards the end of the song, everybody was into it. Like they really were into it. And like the dudes was just dancing on the side. I'm in the middle, like I'm singing. So that was the first time I was like, man, this is cool. Like, I don't know if I was able to connect the dots from that point to be like, yeah, I'm destined to be a singer or I'm destined to be a saxophone player, but I just knew I was bit by the bug. But I didn't start seriously singing in front of an audience until after college. I was in a bar band and I would maybe sing one song towards the end of that experience. But when I moved to Chicago and started really doing music in clubs, I wound up being the lead singer in the band that I started. And it was trial and error, making some mistakes and not feeling comfortable, not looking at people, have my eyes closed on stage, and just trying to find that comfort zone of where to be and how to do it. And the only way you learn that is you got to go through it. You just got to go through it. And, you know, I got better and I got better and I got better. And that's just what happened. Now it's who I am. It's part of my personality, you know, and it's second nature. I was definitely born to do this, but I had to get the skills right to be able to do them.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned Brian Culbertson, him and his band.
Yes.
How exactly did it come about for you to play with them? Because you shared a story earlier about you guys rehearsing, but how did it come about, like, as far as before the rehearsal?
Actually, I was working during the day. So I was doing gigs at night and on the weekends, but I was working a day job. And like around 2007 in the fall, I got laid off. And I was out of work, really didn't want to go back to work. By this time, I really wanted to be a musician. I was probably, 37 at the time. And I didn't really quite see a path for myself outside of just playing music locally. You know, the bands that I had started, they were original bands, but we didn't really have the connections, you know, so they didn't really go anywhere. So I was talking to Brian Culbertson's drummer, who's from Chicago. His name is Chris Miskell. We were on a gig. And I told him I had just gotten laid off and how frustrated I was. I was probably cussing because I was mad, you know. And he was like, well, what do you want to do, man? I was like, you know, I don't really want to go back to working again. I would love to be a full-time musician. So he was like, let me talk to Brian Culbertson about you. People say that kind of stuff all the time. You don't really think anything will come out of it. It just so happened Brian was looking for a saxophone player because Eric Darius had left the band, and he was kind of going through, like Michael Lincoln was doing a couple of dates with him, but couldn't do all of them. Eric Darius was doing a couple, but he couldn't do all of them. So Chris, basically being a great salesman that he is, just pretty much sold Brian on me. He was like, man, look, this guy's great. He sings his butt off as well, and he's not an artist. so he could be dedicated and he'd be able to do all the dates. And Brian wanted the known commodity. He has access to be able to call whoever he wants to call to do this gig. Brian was just kind of like, okay, let me check him out. So they had a show in Chicago, like January 2008. It happened to be Brian's birthday. And I had a gig, and Chris was leaving that show to go play on this gig with me. And Brian came through and he hung out and he heard me play. I met him, talked to him during the break, then he heard me sing, and he offered me the gig like 2 days later. So prior to that, I had been playing in Chicago for like 13 years. Wow. 13 years of just doing local gigs and just like it feeling like it was leading to nothing. On one recommendation, at the right time, it happened. And when I knew that Brian was coming to the club and all of that stuff was going to happen, I had made it up in my mind. I was like, there's no way I'm not going to get this gig. I've just mentally said that to myself. I was like, no matter what happens, I'm going to get this gig. That's just the way I felt about it. And, speaking it into existence and prayers answered and God being there in the room and all of that stuff, all of that happened. But I was determined to all of the experiences and all the lessons and everything that had happened in all those years prior led me to that moment. So it turned out to be really a perfect fit for the style of music that Brian was doing. And I was able to sing the songs that he wanted sung, me and the keyboard player, Eddie Miller. And I was able to hold down the saxophone chair. So it gave him another dimension to his music. And I was there for 10 years. And it changed everything. Literally changed everything.
Nice. Shout out to him.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was an opportunity. It was great. But I think what wound up happening in that process, I learned a lot. Because there's a difference between being a local musician and then being a touring musician and then being an artist. So I had to learn all the differences between those things. But when I started discovering those differences and what they were and what they meant, I realized, all of the things that you've done up to this point, you can be an artist. And there were other people that were telling me that as well. So I would say like the last 3 or 4 years that I was with him, I definitely was trying to find a way to transfer to being a full-time artist. I put out my first album like around year 5 that I was with him. So that was in 2013, my solo debut record. And I had worked on projects before that, and records and CDs and stuff that had come out under other people's name. And then there was a joint collaboration that I did in 2010 with my man, the producer in Chicago, DJ INC. But this was the first time it was just my name on the record. And it was my vision and my focus, and it was gonna succeed or fail based on me and nobody else. But I was a little nervous, but also just kind of ready for that opportunity. And it was well received. It did what it needed to do in order to get that bug for me bitten. I made a lot of mistakes in the rollout of it and the radio promotion and all of those things, but it was stuff that I learned. I'm an independent artist, so the second record, I had a lot more knowledge on what to do. And I knew that in order for it to be what it really needed to be, I couldn't be touring with Brian anymore. So that was the reason why I wound up leaving. But it was a great gig. I learned a lot and still real cool with everybody, perform with Brian from time to time. But it's me time now. The situation also of a now or never kind of thing as well.
That's right. So let's talk about your new album titled Intention and Purpose. What is the meaning behind the album's name?
Especially nowadays, you're hearing a lot about living life with intention and purpose. And, of course, it has spiritual overtones to it. And you hear it a lot in church, and people are kind of in that way of positive thinking. So, I mean, it was pretty much the same for me. And I came up with the title long before I even had one note recorded for the record, because I just wanted the direction going forward to be very purposeful and just be focused on what it is that I'm trying to do and the foundation I'm trying to lay, and really walk into that and be real intentional about it. Like, the music means something to me. Me being an artist means something. Me having something to say and touch people and inspire people through the music all means something to me. So that's kind of the meaning of the title of the record. I kind of wanted that to be an extension of what the first record was, but then also go in some different steps and kind of show some different sides of me that I didn't necessarily show on the first record, just because of the growth that I had over the years. So that's primarily what it means to me.
Okay. And what do you feel is the difference between your first one, which was Catalyst in 2013, correct?
Yes, Catalyst. Time and confidence, because it was a long time between the two records. And part of the reason for that was I'd come to be pretty busy with Culbertson. And, you know, he started involving his touring band into like his recorded projects, because during that process, he also became an independent artist. He left his label deal. So he put out a live record that I was on. Then he put out a studio record that we all contributed to. And then he actually did what I mentioned before, like no smooth jazz artist does, like a tour, like rent a bus, and then we tour the countryside. I did two of those with Brian, one in 2016, and then the last tour that I did with him 2018 in the spring. So it just took a lot of time to get the record done. Like I really couldn't even seriously focus on the record until after I left him in July of 2018. So by that time, you know, I felt more confident as an artist. I felt like I had some things I had to say, but there was a lot more riding on it too. So, you know, I didn't have the golden handcuffs or the parachute to fall from. You know, it's like, oh, I can't sell the CD at Brian's shows because I'm not going to be on Brian's shows anymore. So I have to really make this work. So there was a level of determination. There was a level of fear. There was a level of confidence because I'd done it before. And just a level of just trust in the process that all kind of came about. It was real therapeutic, cathartic. It was an intense time to get the second record done. And I was also focused to have a sound that more people could respond to and that more people could catch on to and that radio could catch on to a little bit more than on the first one. So I think that's the big difference between the first record and the second record. Primarily, it's me. You can tell that they're connected. But I think if you listen to the first one and then you listen to the second one back to back, which I actually need to do that. I don't think I've done that in a while. You can hear the growth from one to the other. But you can also hear the connection to the two records as well, which is something that I like.
Okay. There were two songs I listened to called The Edge and It's All Up to You. What's the meaning behind those two? Because It's All Up to You, that's a love song, right? That's what I got from it. I want to know what the meaning is behind both.
Oh, it's funny because both of those songs, I'll start with It's All Up to You. That was written by its production and writing team in Chicago. And they're basically musical royalty. Vern Allison Jr. is one of the writers. He's a vocalist, drummer, and producer. And his dad was Vern Allison Sr., who was one of the members of the legendary group, The Dells. So he comes from all kinds of amazing music and experiences. So he's a great songwriter, just a really cool cat, great singer too. And the other writer is a cat by the name of Mike Logan Sr. He's a keyboard player, guitarist. He toured with the Staple Singers, the Emotions. He currently tours with Bob Skaggs. And these guys come up with great music. So Vern was basically shopping some songs to me for this record because I needed some material. And that song just really stuck out to me. And I love the groove, I love the melody, I loved everything about it. And I could envision myself singing it and making it my own. And we worked really hard in the studio to get that right. He kind of tore me up vocally in that thing. So, you know, I'm really proud of how that turned out. And it's one of the songs that people really enjoy off the record, one of the 3 vocal tunes on the album. The Edge was my second time working with and collaborating with keyboardist and vocalist, phenomenal guy, Frank McClung. And he had a song that he wanted to place on my record, or a couple of them. And he sent me a couple of things that didn't necessarily work. I didn't think they were my personality, but he happened to be in Chicago doing a gig. And he's like, man, can you book some studio time? I got a song that I wrote when I was 16 that I want to give you. So I booked the studio time, found some cats to come in and play live. Wasn't my normal band, but musicians that I work with and that Frank had worked with, and he was comfortable with those guys. So he came in, they laid down the basic tracks, and then he went back and worked on it and sent me the melody, and we kind of crafted it together and made it work for saxophone. So that was fun. Those two songs are the two songs that we really put a lot of work into. Like, sometimes songs, like I said, they come easy. Other times you have to really put some time into them and get them right. And, you know, I sent him some saxophone tracks and he sent them back to me. I was like, man, I don't like the way any of that sounds. I want to redo it. He was like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, I think I need to really do it. And then, like, he gave me some advice. You know, he's like, when you do it, just sing to it. Just sing. You know, and I think he made a joke, like, just sing, Annie Mae, sing. You know, so I went back with that in mind and did it, and that's what came out on the record. So now The Edge is my third single off the album that is going to Smooth Jazz Radio, so it's getting a lot of airplay right now. I'm really happy for it.
Nice. Marqueal, what do you enjoy the most about being in this industry?
Oh, man, the ability to be my true, authentic self. Like, I've done a day job, I've done accounting, I've worked at pizza places. Like, I don't have that typical story of, like, I grew up and I was a musician all my life and I was going to play no matter what. And I would start, like, I've lived life. I've done some different things outside of music. And I think by doing that, I've learned to appreciate music in a way that maybe someone, this is all they do. You know, maybe they don't appreciate it in the same way that I do. Like, I know that there's something else out there that I could be doing and that I feel like I'd be wasting my soul away or wasting my life away, not really doing what my purpose is. So music and performing music live really allows me to be on stage and be fully expressive, fully in the moment, fully engaged. And I know that I'm affecting people because I feel affected when I'm performing. And there's nothing but positivity and love in the situation. Like, the audience gives it to you, you give it back, and there's just this exchange of positivity and love, and it's the spirit of everything that we do. We change the atmosphere. That's the best thing about it, you know. And a lot of times, because it's the industry and what we do, that part of it, the performing and that exchange and that feeling, winds up being something that you spend less time doing that and more time trying to make a career. But it's because you have that moment of playing and that exchange of performing to an audience that gets it. That's the love that keeps you there. And that's the best thing about it, hands down. Nice, very nice.
So do you think you would be in a pizza place somewhere if you weren't doing music? Where do you think you would be?
Those days are still very vivid in my memory, so I'm sure I'd be somewhere working. But not maybe a pizza place, but probably doing something involving accounting. If I weren't doing music, I can be a numbers guy. I was a numbers guy. Ironically enough, when I went to college, I didn't major in music. I wound up getting a business administration degree. So I'd probably be doing something along those lines, or maybe owning my own business, doing something like that. Or maybe doing something connected to music, like maybe possibly managing a club or owning a bar, those kinds of things. But the great thing about it is I don't have to think about it. I know what my purpose is, and that's what I'm doing. And if I never become super famous, or if I never become a millionaire or rich, you know, being a musician, I'm good with that choice. I'm so good with it at this point because, like I said, this is what I was put on earth to do.
Nice, nice. So, Marqueal, what do you feel are your strengths as a musician? And also, I wanted to know what you felt your weaknesses were, if any, as a musician.
I think my strengths are that I've been in so many different situations that I can serve the music. Like, I've played different styles, so I've learned over the years that it's not necessarily about what I can do, or not necessarily about how great I can be on this song. It's about, I know what to do for this particular song and this particular style in order to make it great. And I respect that. And I think it's one of my gifts. I also think it's probably one of my weaknesses, because when you play so many different styles of music, or when you do so many different things, you don't necessarily have like a signature song. I mean, I've been doing music for over 30 years professionally, and I can't sit here and tell you, like, what is your number one signature song that you can do No matter what, if you were on your sick bed or if you were feeling absolutely great, what is that one song? Every artist has that one song. I probably got about 10 because I've done so many different things. And, you know, the hard thing about that is in this business, you have to be a specialist as well. It's the thing that sets you apart. So, you know, I think that, and then also the challenge of, you know, being more of an interpreter of songs and less of a songwriter. But those are things that I'm addressing. So they won't be weaknesses for long.
I heard that.
Yeah.
So, Marqueal, you're a multi-instrumentalist. What do you feel sets you apart from someone who's just a musician?
You know, that's a little tricky because I think me being able to play piano a little bit, I kind of know what I want from a piano player. I know what I want on drums, or I know what I want from a bass player per se. Now, I don't necessarily have to tell them what to do because a lot of the musicians that I work with, they just get it. They know what to play. But if I'm not getting what I want, I can articulate it. I can say, can you do this on keyboard, you know, not look like a complete idiot because I kind of know what a piano player does. So I think that helps, having a little more knowledge of all the instruments on the bandstand, and, you know, but I don't know how to play guitar at all. I don't know how to play bass at all, but I know the sounds that I want and I know what I'm looking for. But I think being a multi-instrumentalist and also being an artist and being a songwriter, I think all of those things are what helps. I mean, when you're just a musician, not that that's a bad thing because it sounds negative to say, quote unquote, just a musician.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you just wear the hat of being a musician, you're not necessarily thinking about the whole. You're just thinking about what you contribute to the situation, you know. But if you want to be a great musician and you want to be a great artist or a multi-instrumentalist, you have to think about how your piece fits in everything. You know, you can't just say, oh, if I play my part right and everybody else screws up, I'm good because I'm a musician and I played my part right. No, it's about the whole presentation. It's about how the entire song makes you feel, not just your part where you get a chance to shine and do your thing. It's such a collective thing and an important thing that it feels like a group and it sounds like a group and you're affecting people as a group. You know, that's what's important. That means more than anything.
Okay. So aside from never give up, what advice would you give any musician starting out? That's a cliche one right there. Oh, never give up.
Yeah. I think there's a few things that I would say to young musicians coming up these days, because young musicians coming up now are infinitely more prepared musically than we ever were when we were coming up, because the advent of the internet and YouTube and being able to consume information so quick. You know, there are guys that are 15, 16-year-old virtuosos that play circles around me, and they're multi-instrumentalists. Like, they can pick up a saxophone and put it down, and then pick up a bass and then put it down and go pick up a guitar, and they play all of them so well that you don't know what their main instrument is. The problem is, because we live in an isolated society these days, where you can just sit in your room and be on your computer or your smartphone or whatever, you can consume all these things, but you don't really know how to be social. You don't know how to really interact with other people. So I think the most important thing that young musicians can do is interact with the community, interact with people, play and make music with other people. Yeah, it's great to be able to make music on your own and be a one-man band, a super duper artist like a Prince. But can you make music with other musicians? Or are you socially awkward to the point where you don't know how to give and share on a bandstand, or, you know, fall back and let somebody else shine, and then when it's time for you to do your thing, step up and do your thing? So I would say interact with other musicians, interact socially, make sure that you're doing it for the love, because there's a lot of slings and arrows in this business, and it's hard to monetize music enough to a point where you can really make a good living off of it. You know, because there's downloads, there's streaming, like no one's really paying for music anymore, at least not directly to the artist. So if you're doing this because you want to get rich, and you want girls and you want money and all those things, all that stuff may or may not come. So you got to do it for the love. Got to do it for the love. And respect the artists that came before you. You know, don't just learn their licks, or don't just learn how they did it or what made them successful. Show those guys some respect, because they paved the way for all of us to be here. And there's nothing new under the sun. As inventive as I might come up with something, there's something that was written 70 years ago that sounds exactly like what I wrote, or exactly like what I played. So know that you're just a continuum of this stream of music that we're doing, and that it's community, it's a fan, and all of that stuff is super, super important. If you have that kind of perspective, you're going to really go far. You'll go really far, because it's not about you. You're taking yourself out of it, and you're looking at it like a community, and it becomes bigger than you. And that's really important, to make it bigger than you. And of course, never give up. So,
that's right.
You know, yeah.
That's right. So what's next for Marqueal Jordon?
Well, I've got a few shows coming up. I'm doing a show in Jacksonville, actually, on February 9th, Sunday. And it's a show with Isaac Bird Jr. and David P. Stevens, Valentine's-based show. I've got a show coming up on Valentine's Day in Milwaukee with a fellow saxophonist and vocalist by the name of Marcus Adams, bad dude. And then I have a show in Richmond, Virginia, which I really want everybody to come out to. It's at the Tin Pan, a venue in Richmond, Virginia on March 6th. So those are the immediate things that are coming up. And obviously everyone can keep in touch with me or figure out what I got going through my website, and Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and all of those good things.
Okay. You have any shout outs to your team, your band, anybody? I know it's a lot.
Definitely let me shout out my manager, because she's amazing. She's in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia, for those who ain't hip. Shout out to Andrea Young, another Andrea, of course. But she understands what's happening, and she's been a valuable asset to the team, you know, for the last 5 years. So I really appreciate her. I'd like to shout out my working band, which is keyboardist Amr Fahmy, bass player Lamar Jones, and drummer Kahari Parker. My guitar players change up. I use a few different cats. So L.A. Williams or Isaiah Sharkey or Cullen Bogan, Aaron Weistrup, you know, those are guys that I use on guitar. And shout out and thanks to everybody that has supported this journey that I'm on. And that's way too many people to name. But whether it's someone who's tweeted or posted about a show, or come to a show, or, you know, help promote shows for me and brought me into town, and like just people that see the gift in me and that want to help expose it and want to bring light and shine light to my life and to others by me doing what I'm doing. Just a shout out to all of those people. And obviously to my family, my parents, moms and pops, and my daughter, Marqueal Jordon, and to Sharon Original. That's what's up.
Nice, nice. And Marqueal, could you please let us HIndsighters know how we can get your album, please?
Absolutely. Well, you can find it on cdbaby.com or Amazon if you want the physical copy. And you can look for it under Marqueal Jordon. And let me spell my name for everyone. It's Marqueal. That's the first name. Jordan's last name, just like Michael, Jordan. And you can look those up, search those on cdbaby.com or Amazon, and you can get a physical copy. If you want to download or stream, you can go to iTunes, you can go to Google Music, Spotify, all of the digital outlets. You can pretty much find my albums, both of them. And if you want to follow me or say what's up, send me a shout out, you can find me on Twitter, on Instagram. I don't really use Snapchat much. And my website, it's all under my name, Marqueal Jordon. Once again, Marqueal Jordan. And on Facebook, my personal page is full, but I do have a music page, and it's Marqueal Jordon Music. And you can find me in all of those places.
Well, Marqueal, wow. I want to thank you again.
Thank you
for coming to hang with us, and we wish you the best, and we would definitely love to have you back to share more updates with us, and we will definitely stay connected with you.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure, and great to talk music, in a way that I really don't get a chance to talk when I do interviews of this nature. So I appreciate that you wanted to get in depth with it. And thanks a lot, Rhasheeda. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you so much, and you take care.
You do the same.
Thank you. Well, Hindsighters, again, that was saxophonist Marqueal Jordon. Be sure to stay connected with him and check him out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Facebook at Marqueal Jordon Music, Instagram and Twitter at Marqueal Jordon. And also be sure to check out his website, marquealjordan.com. That is spelled MARQUEAL Jordan, JORDAN. Also, Hindsighters, be sure to check out his music on all streaming platforms at cdbaby.com. We got Amazon, iTunes, Spotify, Google Music, and just type in the search bar Marqueal Jordon. Connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Indie Grind to see some new material from new artists. Thank you so much for tuning in. That's all for this segment. I'm Rhasheeda Davis, and that is my time. Until next week, keep on grinding. Peace.